Here's a breakdown so that you can understand and be able to use perspective in art. When an object is 2D, it only has two axes, the X and the Y, also known as length and width. But when an object is 3D, it has three axes, X, Y, and Z, length, width, and height. When you want to create art with depth and volume, you will do it on an axis like this. It's the same X, Y, and Z that we recognize, but there's a negative Z, which denotes downward space, negative Y, which is the space coming toward the imaginary camera, which I'll get to in a second, and then negative X, which is negative X. The imaginary camera in a picture is the place that we are seeing the picture from. The picture and the objects or people in it in the background, the imaginary camera is why we see that. The imaginary camera is the angle in which we are viewing the picture from. If an object is near the camera, it is bigger. If an object is farther away from the camera, or just far, it's smaller. If an object is moving toward the camera, it will appear elongated. And if an object is moving away from the camera, it will appear stumpy or stout. This will also apply to certain objects that are in front of other objects or behind other objects, such as in like a walking animation. So in this picture, we have a model that is clearly in the foreground and we see her full body. That tells us two things. One, that she needs to be bigger than any objects that are behind her or other people. And it also tells us that the imaginary camera must be somewhere right here because we can see the most foreground object or model in this case, full body. So that means that the camera is a few feet in front of the most foreground object. This is what, I know it looks destroyed, but this is what the same picture would look like if the camera was flipped. Now we can see the details on the table, the chairs, the person that was formerly in the background is now in the front. And the character that was formerly in the foreground, we now see the back of, and then still the object on the floor or whatnot. Now here's a photo where technically these rocks, bad rocks, are the most foreground object, but we'll pretend like this model is. So the camera is clearly placed a few feet behind the most foreground model because we once again see their full body. But we also see a little tiny person down here, so that lets us know that there must be some form of height difference. And because of, it's clearly mountains and a river, then we know, oh, they must be looking down at this valley or field. Now here's an example where the camera is placed close to the most foreground objects, which are a vending machine and a person. We know this because we only see the upper half of the individual and the half of the vending machine. We also know that the camera is placed close to these objects because there's an object in the background that is appearing smaller. So remember, X, Y, and Z axis, that is where your camera will be placed, your people or the objects in your picture will be placed, and how far away the background will be placed. If it is near the camera, it will be bigger. If it is far away from the camera, it will be smaller. If it is coming toward the camera or in front of an object or something, it will be elongated. And if it is moving away from the camera or is behind another object, it will be stumpy and stout.